Okay. Hello. Welcome to another episode of Silk and Steel Podcast. I am your host, Carl Za. Today we have a very special guest all the way from Shanghai, China. As you can see, as you can see on the screen, Mr. Dana Burton. Welcome to the show.
What's up? Peace and blessings. Thanks for having me back. We out here fighting the COVID creatures,
I like
fighting for
your
our lives.
I like your costume. You should dress that.
Survival mode.
You should do that for Halloween. It's still, it's good. It's good. I was startled for a little bit when the video feed first came on. But for people who want to see what Mr. Dana looked like, I have a couple videos interview with him from before. You can check those out. I have one talking with Dana about his experience living in China, and another one about Malcolm X. So today we are here to talk about a very specific issue because you are living in Shanghai. You probably lived through one of the longest lockdown in recent history. So I wanted to talk to you about what is that like. I have no idea. I'm here in Bali. All I get is from read on the internet. So you know how reliable the internet is. So I rather hear it straight from somebody who live in the ground zero.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. This has been an incredible, experience. It is something that I think the world needs to pay a lot more attention to. For a brief moment, we were getting attention, but it harkens me back to the first lockdown in 2020. And I can recall going to social media, trying to warn, what I felt like the world, anyone that was listening to what was happening to us at that time. And I think that, what we've just experienced in this past 4 months is even more significant. And you asked me, you said you wanted to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so I'll just give you a brief overview of all three of those things because they're all quite relevant. I think the good thing is lives have been saved, and I think that's irrefutable. It's undisputable. China is winning this fight, this war against COVID, and it has record low numbers of deaths for a nation of this size. Also, a good thing, the people of Shanghai are prepared to deal with calamity, natural disaster, or even, unfortunately, like an actual war. These measures that we, are experiencing, they're definitely wartime measures, without a question. And so the city is prepared for that, for better or for worse. China they got to test out its dual track system. This is where it's trying to set up a system where it can still engage with the West, the kind of Bretton Woods system, international system, but yet devise a separate track where it protects its citizens and protects its nation. And it got a really, really good test run on that dual track system under these circumstances. There's been a boom for certain industries. I think that the future of biotech in China is off the charts. Electric vehicles, we've seen some, despite these lockdowns, incredible headway in that area. Things like mass-produced high-tech gadgets like smartphones have done really well. And we've seen an unprecedented operation, the scale that has never been achieved in human history. And it's going to be something that the learning from this, experience, I think it's going to propel China forward in many ways. The advanced application of technology, the application of robots in real time, and androids, the whole thing, it's been remarkable. So some of the bad things is, in Shanghai, a lot of us got fat, myself included. Like we were home for a long time, and I'm talking to a lot of my friends, not a lot of exercise, and picked up a lot of weight, eating a
I
ton of
couldn't
food.
tell that, Dana. I couldn't tell from under all your guards.
Yeah, man. I don't put on some pounds, and a lot of friends have mentioned that. Small and medium scale businesses, it's been many of them have been hit hard, especially in retail and in service, anything entertainment, food, beverage. It's been really tough, and a lot of the businesses are still closed, and it's slow to get back to normal. There is an exodus.
Oh, what happened? You froze. You said Exodus, and then your screen froze. Are you back? Is it because my cat was running her through the cables? Dana? Okay, let's see. Let me try to reach you on a different tool on Messenger, because looks like you froze.
Really?
Oh,
Can
you're
you hear
back.
me?
You're back. You're back. Okay.
Yeah. You didn't freeze on my side, so
Oh, okay. Keep going.
yeah, everything was fine on my end. So no freeze over here. So yeah, there unfortunately there has been an exodus of both. I think a lot of young people in Shanghai, um, whose careers weren't really stable in the first place, they bounced, they left. The expat community, I'm hearing as much as 50% of all foreigners in China have left. I can't verify that. That's a pretty
Wow.
extreme number, but the numbers are pretty high. There has been an exodus. Um, you know, my Uyghur friends from Xinjiang who live in my neighborhood, they actually moved back to Xinjiang and they want to, fair their chances out there. They feel like they have more opportunity and a better lifestyle in Xinjiang than Shanghai at the moment. So that's how difficult it has been for some people. Get your head around
Wow.
that
Xinjiang,
Xinjiang is offering more opportunity.
the reputedly largest open air prison, according to New York Times. People are going there instead of Shanghai. Wow. Okay.
They're moving back. There has been COVID discrimination against Shanghai people. And this is something that we actually saw um, towards Wuhan, uh, believe it or not, because, the outbreak that happened in Wuhan, people just didn't want to get COVID. And despite this outpouring of love and this outpouring of resources, there was a, huge campaign to support and back Wuhan. But people are people. And the truth is, there was discrimination against Wuhan people that if you were caught outside of Wuhan, in that first year, people were really hesitant to work with you or give you an opportunity. And even when they opened up, there was this kind of COVID discrimination. And we're seeing that with Shanghai, maybe at an even higher level. That's one of the bad things. Like, Shanghai has had this reputation as being number one, the top dog in China. And it is so competitive. There always been a little bit of resentment and a kind of stereotypes and views of Shanghai, and some people are like, kind of stick it to the Shanghainese, like, like it's they look at it as if it's Shanghai's fault for not, you know, dealing with the pandemic in the way that other cities have. Wuhan had to deal with it. Shenzhen, everyone's dealing with it. You're supposed to be the number one city. Get your act together. And so we see that kind of resentment and, a little bit of discrimination going on. And when they talk about the ugly, I think the ugliest parts of it all for me actually have been uh, the hysteria, the panic, and the politicization of COVID to politicize this disease and the info wars and the disinformation wars that are happening in the midst of this fight. And so it has been overwhelming for me. It's much more impactful than I expected. So, seeing, we always talk about debunking a lot of this anti-China rhetoric, but in seeing it play out in real time and seeing the negative consequences of this rhetoric and this barrage of misinformation and disinformation and the effect that it had on people's psychology and mental health, as they're dealing with these lockdowns, it has been really eye-opening, and it's one of the most challenging things that I've had to deal with during this whole lockdown.
Well, I want to bring things to the basics here. When did the lockdown start, and when did it end, if it's ending? I don't know. Is Shanghai still under lockdown right now? What is the situation? You can tell us. Please tell us.
Oh man, so yeah, let me start with the beginning.
Yeah.
And this will be surprising to many. I think the news, the Western news, started to really cover what was happening around April 1st, when they got the news that 26 million people will be locked down, in kind of a staggered lockdown over the weekend, that, full lockdown. And so that's when the Western media started to cover it. But this actually started in Shanghai as early as March 11th. And I've actually have my diary to go through, like my entry posts, when I started to notice that something was happening. But so on March 11th, I said, I got a notice from the government. It said something ish I couldn't read, so I translated it from Chinese. What it said in English, I couldn't believe. It's times like these that I wish what I seen could be unseen. Pray for me, please. That was March 11th, my note. And it was a joke. It was, someone had posted a notice about the prevention mechanisms that were being put in place in Shanghai. And basically they were closing down like karaoke's and like computer bars or whatever. And it was one of these things that got mistranslated with Chinglish. And I can't recall it, but it was basically, it's kind of like this mystery fun house. And it says something like deaf computer camp. We're shutting down all deaf computer camps. And so I'm like, all right, let me make a little post. But March 11th was the beginning. And by March 13th, I was already on lockdown, a sort of quasi lockdown. And basically what transpired for 2 weeks was a sort of mishandling of how to implement the lockdown procedures. And everything from testing to quarantining to contact tracing, like there was this, we could sense that something was happening. We were getting these messages that, there's a spike in these, cases, that there's a new variant. But it was clear that the entire city as a whole wasn't prepared to handle the measures like, some of the other cities did. And so by April 1st, I think that's when you see the central government stepping in and sending, representatives to the city of Shanghai to kind of overlook and say, no, you guys got to do better. And sheesh, since then, we've been on lockdown. It was 2 months of extreme lockdown. And now, as I try to explain it, we're seeing another spike. We're seeing another rise in cases. And so that is resulting in the implementation of more lockdown in certain districts. So it started off as rolling lockdowns. So district by district, depending on how many cases, they would lock down the district. That they threw that out the window. They did the whole city lockdown for 2 months. And now we're kind of back to this situation where, the dynamic policy, it includes residential lockdowns, rolling lockdowns, business shutdowns, mass quarantines, mass testing, changes of like the border control. For example, flights, 5 days ago were shut down from the city. So it's really very tough to pinpoint, exactly what is happening, because there's so many different moving parts to the policies. But we're still in the midst.
What about you personally? Like now, can you get out of your building? Can you walk around, do groceries, go outside, go to bars, go to restaurants?
It is really tentative. I mean, for a brief minute since about June 1st. Since about June 1st, there's been a gradual unlocking, and there was a period, you could totally walk outside. You could walk outside, you could walk around, but different sectors of the city were not fully open, and it was kind of a ghost town. There weren't a lot of places to go, and so I haven't left my district. I don't think I've left the district the whole time. I stayed in the district. I did go out like 2 weeks ago to a bar. My friends had like a live house where they're doing rock and roll music, and he was saying they were doing it every night, and it was underground, and it was really awesome. Like I got out and kind of partied a bit, but I suspect that it's closed because just about a week and a half ago, we got the news that people were congregating at a KTV in my district, and another outbreak happened because of that venue, and that venue was illegally operating, and so you have those kind of situations. It's been a roller coaster, man. There have been so many caveats to this whole experience. There's always some kind of a bit of like a drama or intrigue. Again, I keep talking about the information wars. The news is always hammering home some kind of like fear porn and some clips of some kind of interaction that takes place that people need context to, and a lot of times folks fly off the handle, get really emotional, and don't really figure out what's going on. For example, most of the world saw, millions of people saw the footage of people screaming out their windows in Shanghai. This was on Tucker Carlson, The Guardian, and if you look at it, it seems horrifying, terrible. Hundreds of people, if not actually thousands of people, are screaming and making noises in the middle of the night, all at the same time. And you're led to believe that these people are starving, that they're dying, that they're panicked. Well, that footage is actually from my residence. Like, I live in that complex. That's Costco 2 Bay. And it took me a minute to confirm that that's actually, my community. It looked like it. I kind of thought it was. Then I'm like, well, maybe there's another place that looks similar. But I actually verified the angle, whatever. I took the screenshot and I actually looked out of my window and could see the exact same view. And it is my apartment complex. And I lived through, that experience of people kind of shouting out the window. But it is more of a ritual. And it was only for a brief period of time in the beginning of the lockdown. So, this is a model community. People are not dying, starving. I don't think we've had any deaths. There's like 2,500 units in this complex. It's massive.
I'm sorry. What was the reasoning for what was the context for the screaming footage?
So I think, okay, what happened, as I mentioned, from March 11th to March 31st, we're having these kind of lockdown procedures, and it's kind of out of control. And then rather suddenly, we're told that, the whole city is going to be on lockdown. And so that caused a bit of a panic and a grocery store run where people went crazy going to the grocery store to get food. There were limited supplies. And so in the beginning of the lockdown, there were some real issues with logistics, and people did not have enough supplies. And so a lot of people were nervous, that they tried to order online. They couldn't order things because it was flooded. And so those early moments, the early stages, there was a sense of panic. And so people basically, after dinner time, as kind of a ritual to let off stress, open their window and might tell some jokes. They might sing, or they just might yell out. Like, this was a kind of spontaneous ritual, if you will. People just there are a lot of young people in our communities. You can hear the kids kind of shouting out. They can't get out to play, so they need to let off some steam. But you all actually heard people telling jokes, like making just trying to just calm people down, as well as people singing. So it wasn't all just like just terrible agony kind of yells, but that's what the Western media showed. They showed like a 15-second clip. I don't know if you'll, obviously Tucker Carlson is always slamming China, with some kind of fear porn. So he put it in his segment to show how terrible and how abusive China is. When in reality, I encourage everyone to come to my community and see firsthand. Like, It's one of the greatest communities in the world. So it just really isn't the case.
Yeah, I think people need to keep in mind the context is that Shanghai is a large city. It has 26 million people. There's more people living in Shanghai than in Taiwan. Taiwan has 25 million people. Shanghai has 26 million people. And COVID is the current variant. The Omicron is a much more contagious strain than the first Alpha and Delta strain that emerged. So that is why what people faced in Shanghai was actually a brand new situation. It was actually much more difficult than what Wuhan had to contain back in 2020. That is also the reason why the lockdown in Shanghai was a lot more stringent even than the lockdown in Wuhan, because I was watching videos of Wuhan lockdown back in 2020. People can still, they're locked inside their residential compound, but some of them can still, get out the room, go downstairs, go walk around in their like neighborhood garden, whereas in Shanghai for like a couple of months, people couldn't really leave their room unless to go out to get COVID testing, right? I mean, and that so it's that this is really because the virus have changed, the virus have evolved. So it was a lot. And I remember when you first put on Facebook, you said we're fighting a war. I thought I thought maybe you're half joking, because this was also around the same time when Shenzhen was going through a lockdown, and I was expecting Shanghai lockdown to be like Shenzhen, like lockdown 2 weeks and then coming out of it. I don't think anybody, even in Shanghai, expected the lockdown to last this long. I mean, it's longer than the Wuhan lockdown by now. I mean, it's is for you guys who are living through it. I also have other friends in Shanghai was monitoring their WeChat group. There's a lot of anxiety, a little bit fear, because people are worried in the initial stage. They're worried they're not having enough food. They didn't stock up enough food because they don't know when the lockdown is over. And before, like, the neighborhood got organized and figure out how to buy food in bulk. That's something that just happened organically. But before that, there was a little bit anxiety. People are worried about not having enough food to survive. So first of all, you guys did have enough food, right, throughout the lockdown?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, there was in the early stages, again, that first like week, where we actually I have to look at the timeline, but in the beginning, we didn't have a problem. We could order food online; it would be delivered to us, no problem. We were getting food, but you had to spend a lot of time to do it. You literally get up at 6 a.m. till noon, 6 hours of trying to order food, tapping on the machine rapidly, trying to catch something. It's like fishing, and we had success. We would get our food. Then there was a brief period where even that started to slow down, and it was very difficult to get things. But at the same time, the government started to provide rations every week, and they were fairly timely with that. But this experience, was case by case, district by district. There were some unfortunate incidents where there was corruption, and there were cases where a really corrupt local district manager or community manager, stole the goods and tried to resell the goods, supplies or whatever. So you have that kind of drama. And I think that, you mentioned like the Wuhan and how the Shanghai lockdown was even more severe than the Wuhan lockdown. That was something that a lot of people struggled with and couldn't get their minds around and were wrestling with. Like, why were the measures so strict? But as you mentioned, this virus was, one, far more contagious. Two, the rate of spread actually surpassed the Wuhan. I think at Wuhan's peak, I think it was like 14,000 in a day. Shanghai had already passed 20,000 cases in a day. So we were seeing a rate of spread at a far, rapid rate than actual Wuhan. And because Shanghai is so important to the entire country, something had to be done. Also, something that I learned, during this experience is I've always held the healthcare system in China in extremely high regard. The fact that I've had access to better quality healthcare almost free. It's almost universal. It's not universal. It's not free. You have to pay, but the costs are so low compared to the United States. You could go see a doctor and get medicine for like under $5. A doctor visit and a month's supply of medicine for $5. That is a reality in China. And so what I didn't know was how the healthcare system is over capacity. And I should have known that, because when I go to the hospital, especially in Shanghai, you can see clearly that it is over capacity. The lines are ridiculous. It's like an amusement park at the hottest day of the summer. You go into the hospital to line up in a queue, maybe half an hour on the first floor. You have to line up to get on the elevator, another half an hour. Then you're moving all around in this massive crowded place. And the figures that I came across were that China has 2.7 nurses per 1,000, which is below the average of 11.5 for advanced economies. And in terms of intensive care beds, they have 4.4 per 100,000. The United States has 25.8 beds per 1,000. So Shanghai's healthcare system was on the verge of collapse. If this virus were to spread rapidly at the speed they could have collapsed the entire healthcare system. And so what they did was shut the healthcare system down and shift all of the COVID procedures to what I later called the COVID camps, but these massive makeshift COVID hospitals that they built within a short span of a few weeks, basically taking over stadiums, other facilities, recreational facilities, hotels, whatever they could, as also making pop-up COVID hospitals.
Yeah,
it went from like
my
70,000.
dad's family lives in Haining, which is a town about 45 minutes south of Shanghai, and they also reported their stadium was converted into a quarantine center for the people coming out of for the diagnosed COVID positive people coming out of Shanghai. So even in the satellite cities around Shanghai, they also converted stadiums into temporary COVID quarantine centers. Yeah.
And so that also added a little, a bit to the tension. This procedure of China was focusing less on vaccines. Vaccines is part of but China's method to containing COVID has more to do with contact tracing and quarantine. So actually quarantining people and stopping the spread of it. They're more interested in that. And so
I think it's because people need to keep in mind the current COVID vaccine, they do not stop infection. They just limit the severity. So if you have a COVID vaccine, you have a lot less chance of being hospitalized, of it being developing a full-blown severe case where you face hospitalization or death. That's what vaccine was designed to do, but it's not designed to stop the infection. So even if everybody's vaccinated, COVID can still spread. The virus can still jump from host to host. And I think also one of the problem in China is, even though it's like 80%, each has 80% vaccination rate, that 20%, given China's overall population, China has 1.4 billion people, like 20% is more than 200 million people. 200 million people facing certain death. That's still pretty, that's definitely will collapse any health system.
Absolutely. And so you know, the amount of people that were actually housed in these facilities is pretty staggering. And that experience of, you know, being taken away from your home and having to go there, for a lot of people, there was a lot, like myself personally, that was my biggest concern. Like, I just did not want to go. I don't want to go to the COVID camp. I don't want to. So that was kind of like my running joke throughout the thing. I came up with the name. I called it the Terror Dome. I was like, I don't want to go to the Terror Dome. You know, I don't want to go to the COVID camps. But in reality, I had a lot of friends that went. My neighbors went. They went and came back. The majority of facilities were, you know, fairly well managed. You know, Shanghai's first-rate city. So there were some cases of some facilities not being up to par. But I did not hear people coming back with like terrible nightmare stories. Like, they did their time and they came back. And the numbers are staggering, Kyle. Some of the figures I saw from the state government is over 700,000 people. 700,000 people were, you know, quarantined in this kind of fashion. Maybe up to, you know, at least 500,000 people went specifically to these facilities. So within 2 months, that is a tremendous amount of people to go through this experience of being picked up, you know, taken there. So while all this is happening, again, it's a big city, and so there's going to be hiccups. There's going to be drama. There's going to be people-to-people conflicts. And so, you know, what I was struggling with was this nonstop barrage of media and manipulation and the psychological effects that they have. Like, we take it for granted, you know, like all these China bashing stories, like we're kind of used to it, right? These guys are always saying these negative things. But when you're living through something like this in a kind of a wartime scenario, again, we are being given notices that we are at war with COVID. We're fighting COVID. And you have an outside source, Western media, trying to demoralize you, trying to get you to lose faith and confidence in what you're doing. The effects are they're quite real, and I saw that firsthand. Like, some people cracking, some people breaking down. I mean, listen, Trump came out during this time, or just before this time. He said that you know, he was talking about the war in Ukraine. He said we should paint the planes with Chinese flags and bomb the shit out of Russia and blame it on China. Mike Pompeo said that, you know, we should immediately recognize Taiwanese independence. Joe Biden was like, we don't fear a rising China, but that doesn't mean we don't want to fear a rising China. I don't know what the hell that means. Fox News, again, they tried to blame the war on Ukraine, on China. Tucker Carlson was platforming people who said that they wanted the U.S. Army thirsty for sitting on a throne of Chinese skulls. And so every day you're getting hit with another media spin, and you're dealing with this situation. It can be quite traumatizing. It's psychological warfare. And I realize now more than ever, like, the damage it's meant to do. It's meant to get people to kind of speculate and just drift off the rails and come up with their own conspiracy theories, and basically send you into a state of panic and chaos. And they want you to react in a dramatic way. They want you to go out in the streets and, like, you know, protest and destroy things. This is all a tactic of warfare, and I experienced that firsthand, man. It's pretty intense.
Yeah, I mean, how did you deal? Because, like, I mean, just by being, I know for myself, speaking personally, I know as long as I have internet, I can be sedentary and sit in my room. I have no problem. Give me food, give me an internet connection, I'm good. But for a lot of people, it's not like that. You know, people missing human contact. People, you know, we're social animals. People desire to be outside, to be seen among other people. I mean, it's difficult. It's difficult for people. It's like, because it's basically it's like confinement, right? It's like prison. You're a prison inside your own home, and what was that like for you, as you initially were going through the lockdown at your place?
Yeah, I think, I thought I was prepared for it because I had already been through the lockdown, and I've experienced, I've said this is like almost the fifth reset that I've been through in China. I've been through, a lot in this country. So I felt I was prepared for it, but surprisingly, it did creep up on me. The time, and again, the stories, they're really convincing and compelling. And so how I coped was, I had to get information. I had to debunk what was happening. There were things that were happening that when you see them on firsthand, you want to answer. You want an immediate answer. Like, wait a minute, what the hell is going on here? The drone robot is flying around and he's sending this message that sounds really eerie and odd. But then you fact check it and research it and find out, well, you know what? It's actually not that odd. That language, it's quite regularly used. It has a historical context. It's not the first time, and it's not the first time that Western media has put this spin on it. You might see a situation. I think one of the things that kind of pushed me towards the edge is when I saw video of actual violence in my city. And so when I see residents engaging with volunteers from other cities, I know how dangerous that can be. Like through history, I know of examples of that's how conflicts actually arise, is when you have people from other parts of the city coming as volunteers, but they don't speak the local language. And they start to get into conflicts with the local people, and it spins out of hand really quick. And so when I saw the footage of, these guys with these long poles poking at people, I was like, wait a minute, this is not happening. And so for some people, it was footage of, the dog being killed, or footage of the children being separated from family. What happened in all of those cases is that they all got dealt with extremely quick. So it wasn't like this was something that is normative. This is some kind of policy. This was an aberration. People saw it, and immediately I saw the system correct it. The government will come out and say, hey, this policy was on the book, separating children, but you know what? This is not going to work. There's pushback from all of the people. We have these hospitals specifically for children, but we get it. This is going to be, we're going to fix this policy immediately. Families stay together.
This is a paradox in China, actually, because, one of the things that we in the West likes to talk about, China has censorship. You don't have freedom of speech. You can't protest. You can't do all these things. But look at what happened in U.S. Sure, we supposedly have freedom of speech, freedom of expression, whatever. But despite the protests, despite all these criticisms, nothing ever changes. In China, it's true that sometimes, hey, hello, Dana, I can see you now. So in China, sometimes despite the fact, yes, there is censorship, they will censor viral content on social media, but very quickly, a lot of these issues that was exposed by the viral social media content, they often get addressed very quickly. So this is kind of the paradox, because we're told, okay, if you don't have transparency, if you have censorship, how can you have a good governance? But the difference is, in China, things gets fixed. When shit happens, things gets fixed. In U.S., when shit happens, you can talk about it. There's all kind of talking heads talking about it, but nothing ever changes. I mean, like we've been talking. Like people have been talking about kids in cages on the U.S. border for years now. Like now we have different president in office, different administration. Still, nothing changes. Nothing. We all know what is wrong. What is wrong with the system? But the system doesn't change. It's not It's not really a hold accountable in a way. Not the way that. Not in the way that the Chinese government is ironically being held accountable by public opinion inside China, because we do see issues getting fixed in China rather quickly, especially compared to what's going on in the U.S.
Absolutely, it is a paradox. And speaking of changes, I've changed. I just kind of wanted to, simulate the urgency of what was happening. Like people are masked up, suited up. The testing is unbelievable. I've been tested nearly 90 times now, 90 COVID tests within 3 months. This massive testing.
Do you guys do one test per day or?
Pretty much. At one point, it was one test per day, and sometimes 2 tests per day. Sometimes you self-test at home. They're sending you the test, so you can do it yourself. And then, you might, in the beginning, they had us lining up in the courtyard, in the park, outside. Again, this community is incredible. Now things are getting back to normal, at least in my community. I'm digressing, but I wish people could see outside the window right behind me. There's a massive basketball court, and there's kids playing basketball, and there's it's like 2 times the size of an Olympic swimming pool, massive swimming pool outside, and people are swimming in it right now. And so I think the worst is behind us, but the scale and magnitude of this operation, I believe like 60,000 volunteer hospital workers, the massive testing, we just went through like mass testing a couple of days ago. Again, like 80 times, including like the self-test where you do the rapid test. You do it at home, you do your own swab, you put it in, you see if you're positive or negative, as well as the lab tests, where you go outside now and they have these kiosks. I think over 10,000 of these kiosks across the city, where there's workers inside. They take a swab, they put it in a beaker, and they send it to the lab to test it. They've upgraded the health code system. One of the things I wanted to mention was this idea that the COVID policy is very rigid, that it's a zero tolerance policy, and it's just this inflexible, unscientific policy. The truth of the matter is, the entire time for 2 years, they've had this dynamic COVID policy, which is different province by province, actually how it's rolled out and some of the strategies that they use in terms of like rolling lockdowns and the technology. And one example of that is in Hangzhou and in Shenzhen. They're the places that came up with the whole health code system. And part of the reason was that because they had the resources. In Hangzhou, it was Alibaba that came up with, the Alipay health code system. And in Shenzhen, it was Tencent. And so they were the first ones to say, like, we don't want complete lockdowns. We can do rolling lockdowns district by district by leveraging this technology. And places like Shanghai, when they saw that, the people themselves demanded, like, we want that health code system. We want to know where the COVID is in real time. And so we just saw in Shanghai a merger that wasn't happening before between the Tencent and the Alibaba and the Tencent system to kind of consolidate those into one standardized health code system. And so all of our tests are in our phone. You can check in real time the results of all your tests. And so they have a much more streamlined system, which for some people, is an area of concern. There's pushback because they see where there's an opportunity for great good. There's an opportunity for, misuse and abuse. But without a question, the system has been rolled out, and we are all, every 48 hours, you can't leave your district. I mean, you can't leave your compound without having a test every 48 hours. So if I do want to go outside, within the past 48 hours, I need to have this test. And I think outside of your district, it's like 72 hours, or like public facilities. So there is this dynamic, evolving system, that's being applied. And one more thing I'll note is, there are people that saw footage of folks getting boarded into their homes. Like the outside of their building was like boarded up, or gates. What happened was we found that in Shanghai, there was a higher rate of spread in these older homes, in these homes that had people where they shared community bathrooms. these really old, call them liulang, right? Or in Shanghai,
Oh, because they
these
think the
old.
virus might have traveled via the ventilation system because it's air via air droplets, right? Because that's how COVID spread. Yeah.
So there was a sort of a crackdown on those specific types of homes, and they had like a little more strict measures, and they were actually quarantining people that weren't positive. If you lived in one of those homes and someone in your floor or in your building tested positive, they were asking them to be quarantined, and that happened for a brief period of time. But there were some expats, some foreigners that were caught up in that, and it totally threw them off guard. Like I actually saw, I'm following the state media where they release these regulations, so I know that this is happening. But these people were in their homes and didn't know. So if someone came, knocked on their door, and were asking them to leave, and they refused. They're like, "No way, I'm not positive." And there was a big stink. Some guys had to go to the embassy, or call the embassy or whatever. But the policies are changing. They're quite dynamic and flexible, and every district is experimenting with some kind of different method. Again, I talked about the use of robots. Some districts had access to more drones, where they're using drones to give supplies to people. And there was also a massive effort to make sure no one gets left behind. Countless volunteers knocking on people's doors to make sure, like, that, there's no way you couldn't get tested. They're going door to door to make sure you're getting tested. And if someone, for an elderly person, they're going to knock on the door and make sure they're safe. They were using drones and robots to deliver medicine and supplies to people's homes. Special cases and passes were made for people that had emergency and needed to go to the hospital. So there's a lot to unpack to what was going on and what is still going on in Shanghai.
So right now, you still need 48 hours health code green, which means you need to get tested within 48 hours if you want to travel. And some district in Shanghai still under some sort of lockdown, right?
Yeah, some places are still on lockdown. Some districts, and because of this new variant that has come out, people are concerned that, there's actually rumors that were spread that the city was going to go back under lockdown, and the government came out and said that's not the case. It's not going to happen. But because of the new variant, new variant, this Omicron, what is it, B.2.5 or something? I'm not sure. That has just been identified. Certain districts are on lockdown, and certain communities compounds are on strict lockdown. And so that's kind of how the rolling lockdowns work, depending on where the cases arise.
Yeah, I mean, like it's really tough decision, in times like this, because I think one good comparison is people can look at what's happening in Taiwan, right? Because Taiwan has a comparable population as Shanghai, a little, 1 million less population than Shanghai. And when the Omicron started to rip through Taiwan, within several weeks, the number of deaths in Taiwan already was double that of Shanghai. I mean, because like, and honestly, I just don't think any other government outside mainland China has kind of the capability to kind of mobilize and do that kind of containment effort. I don't think even in U.S., even if the government wanted to, you wouldn't be able to do that. I just don't see it happening.
I think they wanted to. The playbook that China is doing, I've been doing a lot of research into, what is the dynamic COVID policy? What is it? What are the mechanisms? What does it entail? It doesn't include a lot. Like, this is standard playbook. They're doing a lot of disinfecting. A lot of other countries aren't. They don't have those. They're not mass disinfecting, buildings and streets. But it's just basically contact tracing, quarantine. They have their therapeutics that they're using. They're doing vaccinations, and they're doing lockdowns, and obviously masks. You don't even have to mandate masks. It's just such a norm in China. But I saw the same playbook, and I actually listened to Joe Biden campaign that he would do these same things. He even claimed on the campaign trail that he was going to get the military involved. He was like, I'm going to get the military to crack down on COVID. And then ultimately, they gave up because it's clear the political situation in the United States, they've decided, vaccines is the only solution that we have. We're going to go with vaccines. You have the choice if you do it or not. Everything else, we're going to just let it fall to the wayside. And that's become living with COVID versus China, where they did implement these procedures in 2020, and they did get out of the pandemic in a record time. By June, people were partying in the streets. I was in Wuhan in September. Okay, September of 2020, I'm in Wuhan making hip hop videos, partying with the people, pool parties, dancing, going crazy, living our best life. And not only that, the economy rebounded. China saw 8% growth, the only nation to see positive growth in 2021. So China's model worked. But for some reason, obviously, the United States, the West, they can't duplicate it. So they're not going to have any mention or credit towards what China has done. And what's interesting now is that China's continuing with these policies, but there's a massive backlash. And, there's this criticism that this is wrong, this is unscientific, it's inhumane, whatever they want to argue. So the bias and the double standard is pretty extreme. But, time will tell. Is this second wave, particularly Shanghai with the massive lockdown and the kind of economic repercussions that it's caused. Like we just saw the data, the second quarter is 0.4 GDP growth, so which is alarmingly low. For the first half, it's 2.5 GDP growth for the first 6 months, but the second quarter just came out 0.4. So there is going to be a lot of pressure. It is going to be politicized to see if China can, in the next 6 months, improve those GDP numbers and kind of stave off the criticism.
My little son is here. He wants some attention. He wants me to show him chicken videos. I'm really glad that you guys are finally emerging out of this COVID situation in Shanghai. I mean, okay. Okay.
He's glad too.
Let's go guys.
My wife is trying to get my son out of here. So yeah, well, I mean, it's where we're coming up to 53 minutes. Okay. Any last concluding remarks, Dana? Any last words?
Yeah, I'll share one of my diary entries from this experience. I said this is day 30 on May 1st, and I wrote, defying the odds and all of the doubters, Shanghai is closely approaching zero COVID, which means zero new cases in the community aside from those already in isolation or quarantine. 56 central commerce warehouses, some 80% of the city's total, have reopened. 862 secondary warehouses. This is all data from the government, just talking about how the city is reopening and trying to recover. I said that our community spirit is high. Today, residents rallied and organized to transport large truckloads of free government rations, groups purchases, and other individual personal online e-commerce orders. Currently, we don't have any COVID cases in our building, and all of the folks who were sent to the emergency hospitals have returned home COVID-free. A lot to celebrate as we work together towards a common goal, zero COVID. I'm just proud of everyone, how kind and how much sacrifice is being made. The experience has united us in ways I could have never imagined. Love, Shanghai. And so we continue to persevere, continue to fight on. We're fighting this COVID thing, and we're still fighting against the propaganda and the haters. But we keep a positive spirit, and it's always great to see you, brother. Thank you for having me on the show, and I look forward, to being back again soon.
Hey man, it's always good to hear from you, and that's very eloquently put. I will have you back just to give us an update on the Shanghai situation, because it's always evolving, and it's always good to have somebody actually on the ground. I trust the people I know rather than these reporters working for corporate media. So thank you for coming on the show and give us the showdown. Thank you again, Dana, and thanks everyone for tuning in. Until next time, bye bye.
Peace, love and light, peace.